Before I tell you what happened, I want to ask you something. Have you ever looked at someone you loved and realised you never actually knew them at all? Not the version they showed you, not the version everyone else praised, the real version. Because the day I found out my husband was sleeping with my best friend, I didn't scream, I didn't throw anything, I didn't beg. I just stood there, holding a grocery bag in one hand, my keys in the other, and had one terrifying thought. If they could both lie to my face this easily, what else had I missed? And if you stay with me until the end, you'll understand why my divorce lawyer looked at me like I was speaking another language and said, "Wait, he cheated on you and still doesn't know how much money you make. Before we get into it, tell me where you're watching from. What city? What country? And what time is it where you are right now?" I always love knowing how far stories can travel. And if you enjoy real emotional stories about betrayal, survival, and starting over, stay until the end. Subscribe if that's your kind of story, because this one changed me forever. I'm 34 years old now. At the time this happened, I was 31, married for almost 6 years, and living what most people would have called a very good life. I was the calm one, the reliable one, the kind of woman who remembered birthdays by mailed handwritten thank you cards and still cried at old voice notes. I believed in commitment, in showing up, in building something slowly, carefully, like a home with the lights left on for the people you love. My husband Daniel was charming in the way that made people trust him fast. He was easy to be around. Funny without trying too hard. The kind of man who carried grocery bags from older women in parking lots and remembered waiters' names. We met at a friend's engagement dinner. He spilled red wine on the tablecloth, made a joke about ruining elegant events, and spent the rest of the night making me laugh. Back then, that felt like safety. And my best friend Ava, she had been in my life for 11 years. We met at work in our early 20s, both underpaid and overcaffeinated, eating vending machine chips for lunch and promising each other we'd have better lives by 30. She came to every major milestone. She stood beside me at my wedding. She cried when I cried. She called my mother Mama June as a joke, and my mother loved her for it. From the outside, we looked solid, protected, blessed. Even Daniel kissed my forehead before leaving for work. Ava dropped by on Sundays with pastries. We had little routines, Friday takeout on the couch, group dinners once a month, holidays at my parents' house where everyone laughed too loudly over board games. There were mornings I'd wake up before Daniel and just watch him sleep, thinking, this is what peace feels like. That's what makes betrayal so violent. Not because it comes from a monster, but because it comes from someone you once felt safe next to. Looking back now, the signs were there. They always are, aren't they? But love has a strange way of protecting the people we trust. It edits reality, it softens sharp edges, it gives bad behaviour kinder explanations. At first it was little things. Ava started texting Daniel directly instead of in our group chat. She'd send him memes, restaurant recommendations, random questions she could have easily sent to me. If I noticed, I told myself it was normal. We were all close, then Daniel started guarding his phone in a way he never had before. He used to leave it face up on the kitchen counter, battery nearly dead, half his life forgotten in plain sight. Suddenly it was always in his pocket, screen down, volume off. His routine shifted too. He started working late more often. But when he came home, he never looked stressed. He looked alert, composed, almost energized. There was a new cologne I didn't recognize once, something woodsy and expensive. And when I asked, he said a coworker had sprayed it on him as a joke. Ava got stranger too, though I didn't call it strange then. She became overly affectionate with me, too soft, too attentive. She'd bring me coffee without asking, compliment my hair, ask if I was happy in my marriage in this careful voice, like she was testing the ground under her feet. One night at dinner, she said, "You're lucky, you know that? A man like Daniel is rare." It should have felt harmless. Instead, something in me tightened, but I ignored it because Ava was Ava. And Daniel was Daniel. And when the people who hurt you are the same people who helped build your world, your mind resists the truth with everything it has. There were financial details too, ones that embarrass me now because they seem so obvious. I paid most of our larger bills from my account. Mortgage overages, vacations, repairs, insurance gaps. Daniel covered his portion of the household, but I carried more, mostly because I could. I worked remotely as a brand strategist and licensing consultant. The work sounded vague, so people assumed it was small. I never corrected them much. I liked privacy, I liked peace, I liked not performing my success. Daniel used to call it my laptop life. he'd laugh and say, "Must be nice to answer a few emails and call it work." I laughed too. That was my mistake, because every time I minimized myself to make someone else comfortable, I taught them to underestimate me. The truth found me on a Thursday. It was raining. I remember that clearly because my sleeves were damp from carrying grocery bags in from the car. Ava had texted earlier saying she might stop by after work because she needed girl time. Daniel had told me he'd be home late. Another meeting. I walked into the kitchen and heard voices in the den. At first I smiled. I thought maybe Daniel had gotten home early. Maybe Ava had come by to wait for me. Then I heard her laugh, not her normal laugh, the softer one, the intimate one, the one women don't even realise they use when they want to be adored. I stood still. I don't know what made me move quietly instead of calling out. Instinct, maybe. Some ancient warning that reached me before my conscious mind did. And then I heard Daniel say, low and familiar, once she signs, we won't have to sneak around anymore. My entire body went cold. Not hot, not shaking at first. Cold. I stepped just far enough to see them reflected in the black screen of our turned-off television before they saw me directly. Her hand was on his chest, his hand was on her waist, and both of them looked comfortable. That was the part that broke me first. Not the touch, not the lie, the comfort. Like this had been happening long enough to become natural. I don't remember dropping the oranges, but I remember the sound. One rolled under the entry bench, another hit the wall and split. Ava turned first. Daniel spun around so fast he nearly knocked over the lamp. The room went silent in that horrible, unnatural way silence gets when everything important has already been said. Ava whispered my name. Daniel took one step forward, and I said, very calmly, "Don't?" I think that shocked them more than if I'd screamed, because in that moment, everything before it changed meaning. Every late meeting, every shared look, every strange compliment, every time I thought I was imagining distance. I wasn't imagining anything. If you were standing where I was standing, would you have noticed the signs sooner? Would you have confronted them right there? Or stayed quiet until you knew the full truth? Tell me honestly in the comments, because I still think about that. That night, I slept in the guest room with the door locked. Daniel knocked once around midnight and said, "We need to talk." I said, "No, you need to wait." And sometime around 3 a.m, staring at the ceiling fan, turning in slow circles, I realised something important. Angel would not protect me, clarity would. The next morning, I called in sick to nothing because I worked for myself and started making lists, not emotional lists. Real ones, bank accounts, property records, insurance policies, password resets, screenshots, timeline, names, dates. Then I called a divorce attorney recommended by an older client of mine. Her name was Monica, and she had the kind of voice that made chaos sit down and behave. She asked me what happened, and I told her everything in one straight line. Then she asked about assets. I gave her the numbers. There was a pause. Then she said, "I'm sorry. Can you repeat your annual income?" I repeated it. Another pause. Then, "Does your husband know you make that much?" I actually laughed. My first laugh since the night before. Dry, exhausted, almost embarrassed. I don't think he's ever cared enough to ask. Monica exhaled slowly and said, "Well, that may be the most expensive assumption of his life. You see, Daniel knew I worked. He knew I had clients. But because I dressed simply, worked from home, drove my old car, and never built my identity around money, he assumed his corporate job made him the important one, the stable one, the one I needed." He never realised that while he was explaining interest rates to me like I was a child, I was quietly clearing multiple 6 figures a year and keeping meticulous records. Over the next 2 weeks, I moved like a different woman. I copied documents, protected my business accounts, removed him from anything he didn't legally need access to, changed beneficiaries where I could, saved every message I found. And yes, there were many. Enough to erase any lingering self-doubt. Ava's messages were the worst. Not because they were romantic, because they were familiar. She knew the details of my life while helping him lie inside it. She knew when I was tired, when I was visiting my mother, when I had deadlines. She helped him map around me. That kind of betrayal doesn't stab. It hollows. Still, I stayed calm. I even told Daniel 3 days later, "I think we should separate." He looked relieved before he looked sad. That told me everything. He started pretending to be noble then. Said things like, "I never wanted to hurt you, and this just happened." And my personal favourite I didn't mean for feelings to get complicated. I didn't argue. When someone sets your house on fire, you don't stand there debating whether the match was intentional. The climax came in Monica's office when he was served. Daniel stared at the papers like they were written in another language. Ava, who had clearly expected some dramatic fight, was nowhere in sight. He called me 23 times that day. I answered once. "Why are you doing this so fast?" he demanded. I was sitting in my car, parked outside a coffee shop, watching people carry on with ordinary lives, and I said, "Because I'm not interested in competing for a man who can be stolen." He went quiet. Then he said something I will never forget. "You don't have to ruin everything. We can be fair about this." Fair, that word. I almost smiled because for the first time I knew something he didn't. There was no empire for him to take from me. No helpless wife clinging to his salary. No woman backed into a corner. There was just me. Prepared. Informed. Done. When the financial disclosures came out, Monica later told me his expression changed completely. She said he kept rereading the page with my income like the numbers might rearrange themselves into something more flattering for his ego. Apparently he asked, "Since when?" "Since always, Daniel." "Since while I was cooking your favourite soup when you had the flu. Since while I was covering the extra mortgage payment without mentioning it. Since while you were underestimating me because I made it look easy." After that, things moved quickly. The divorce went through, the house was sold, my business has stayed mine, my peace came back in pieces, Ava sent one long message about regret and love, and not meaning for it to happen this way. I never answered. Some doors don't need closure. They just need to stay closed, and yes, for a while I missed them, not them as they truly were. The version of them I had loved, the routines, the holidays, the inside jokes, the innocent memories that had no idea what was coming. That's the strange part of healing. You can miss what was real to you even after learning it wasn't real to them, but grief and wisdom can exist together. You can still cry and still leave. You can still love and still choose yourself. Now I live in a smaller place with better light. I make my coffee in silence. I buy flowers for myself because I like the way they soften a room. My life is quieter now, but it is honest, and honest peace is worth more than decorated lies. I used to think the saddest thing that could happen was ending up alone. I don't believe that anymore. The saddest thing is being surrounded by people who benefit from your love while secretly disrespecting it. The saddest thing is shrinking yourself so others can feel taller. The saddest thing is confusing loyalty with self-abandonment. And the most beautiful thing? Learning your value before life forces you to. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Not every woman who walks away is broken. Some of us leave very quietly because we already know the noise is behind us. So tell me, what would you have done? Would you have confronted them on the spot? Would you have forgiven either of them? Would you ever trust again after something like this? And was I right to file for divorce immediately and step aside? If this story connected with you, share your thoughts below. I read every comment. And if you want more stories about betrayal, healing, and the moment people finally recognize their own worth, stay with me, because sometimes the end of a marriage is the beginning of a woman finally meeting herself.